and we'll be having a break at 6:15 for those that wish to break the fast. Okay, we'll go straight on. The meeting this evening will be live streamed, meeting to the public. A recording of the public part of the meeting will be available on the council's website within 24 hours of the meeting. And I think I don't need to do the rest. We've done it all before. Members of the public are entitled to take photographs, film, audio, record and report on all public meetings in accordance with the Openness of Local Government Bodies, Regulation 2014. People may not, however, act in any way considered to be disruptive and may be asked to leave. Emergency evacuation procedure from the council chamber is turn left, follow the green emergency exit signs to the main town hall entrance and proceed to the assembly point at St George's Square. Have we got any apologies tonight? I'm aware of 2. Well, I looked at it. It's to do with people who are speaking online. Don't got anybody. So,
Chair, we have apologies from councillors Alia Khan and Councillor Farouk.
Minutes of the 21st of February. You okay with those? I'll sign them later on. Section 106 of the Local Government Finance Act. Nothing. Any disclosure of interest tonight? Members can either say it now or when the item's called. Urgent business?
None, Chair.
Okay. So I want to move the order around. We'll deal with Leaholds, Bute Street. Abby, if you want to go first, and we'll see if we can get your report in. We'll see if we can do it in about 14 minutes. David?
Just before we start, there were 2 items on the agenda where the name of the applicant has been misprinted. I'm merely asking whether, for the permanent record, whether the copies of the documents on CMIS can please be amended to show the correct information.
Yes, it's on the update. Yeah. It's on the update. Have you got it? Did you get this?
It's on the update, but if the permanent record on CMIS could be amended, I think that would be far better.
Yeah. Okay, we'll do that. Okay. Leaholds, Bute Street. Abby.
Thank you, Chair. Please note the content of the update sheet. The applicant is Luton Halls Properties Limited. The lead local flood authority has now removed the objection to the scheme and amendments are proposed to conditions 9 and 16. This application seeks planning permission for the conversion and change of use of the student accommodation to co-living accommodation, together with the construction of new entrance canopies, alterations to parking provision, boundary treatments, lighting, cycle stores, bin stores, landscaping, and the demolition of the existing Warden's bungalow. The application site is located within Luton Town Centre and the Creative Quarter. The proposed scheme will reuse the existing buildings to deliver 84 co-living units, capable of providing accommodation for up to 459 residents. The co-living units have a private bedroom and shared kitchen living area, bathroom and WC. The only exterior alterations to the buildings are new entrance canopies and front doors. New bin and cycle stores are also proposed. The existing on-site Warden's bungalow will be demolished and the existing ancillary office space in Block 3 at ground floor will be retained as office for the development. Extensive landscaping, as you can see on this plan, is proposed as part of the development, and the applicant has advised that they intend to provide a shared outside gym for residents. The car parking provision will be reduced from 42 spaces to 6 accessible spaces. There are 98 long stay cycle spaces and 20 short stay cycle spaces proposed. There is 1 single pedestrian and vehicle access proposed into the site, which is on the next slide. There are no amendments proposed to the internal layout of the development. It will remain as per the existing student accommodation. The council refused planning permission for the conversion of these buildings into flats in 2021. The reasons refusal were primarily with regard to the fact the retention of the buildings was considered to be in conflict with the regeneration objectives of the town centre, in particularly the Creative Quarter, and therefore in conflict with policy LLP 3 and LLP 11. The council considered that in order to comply with the development plan, a mixed-use scheme should be provided on this site. The application was the subject of a public inquiry in 2022. The appeal was dismissed by the inspector, who considered that a purely residential scheme is compliant with development plan and the retention of the buildings appropriate in this location. In addition, it was established in the 2022 appeal that there is no longer a need for the site as student accommodation. In terms of meeting housing need, co-living is a relatively new form of housing, and the strategic housing market assessment does not make an assessment of housing need for this type of housing. The council does not have a specific planning policy or SPD on the provision of co-living development. However, it is considered that this application adequately demonstrates that there is a need for this type of housing, particularly for younger people looking for a sociable, low-cost form of rent. There are significant sustainability benefits of the retention of the existing building, especially given its close proximity to the bus and train station. The external landscaping is considered to have a positive impact on the character and appearance of the area, and the canopies are considered acceptable. The proposal will not have a detrimental impact on any neighbouring occupiers. And whilst the highways officer did request a further pedestrian access to the bus station for residents, the access arrangements are the same as the scheme approved by the inspector. As such, no objections are raised in this regard. There are currently no policy adopted size requirements for rooms or communal spaces which are applicable to co-living accommodation within Luton. In this case, there are no physical changes to the proposed internal layout of the building. The internal co-living accommodation is exactly as the student accommodation, the only difference being that the tenancies will not be restricted to students and the extensive external communal area provided. Whilst it would be desirable to have larger rooms and further shared facilities, given the existing use of student accommodation, the impact is not considered significantly harmful as to warrant refusal of the application. A co-living management operation and management strategy will be required to be submitted for approval to the LPA prior to occupation. This will need to confirm the length of tenancies. The development will also need to accord with the occupancy schedule, which is one person per room, and a condition is recommended to this effect. On this basis, it is considered that the development will comply with the policies in the adopted development plan, and it is recommended planning permission is granted. Thank you.
Thanks, Abby. I'll open it to questions now. I'll take the first question is, you've got up to 459 residents. What about the bin storage? Would you consider it to be sufficient for all those residents to generate the amount of rubbish they probably would do?
There is a condition about waste management as part of the recommendation, and I think the storage proposed will be acceptable.
Councillor Franks? Oh, Francis Steer.
Is there any section 106 on this? Is there any section 106 planning gain for us on this?
No, there's no contributions on this because of the type of development that's proposed. Oh, yeah, because it's co-living rather than flats. We don't have adopted policies in terms of developer contributions for this type of proposal.
Yeah, there's reference to 10 representations in favour, but I can't find any reference in the report to where they came from or why they were in favour.
There's copies of the letters, obviously, on the planning file, and they basically indicated that they were in support of the application.
Okay, in that case, condition 7, which is the one you were referring to, Dave, about refuse, there's at least one or maybe more words missing from line 2 between the words management of the and shall.
That should say of the scheme.
Any further questions? Any comments? David?
I'm not 100% happy about this scheme at all, but to be quite honest, I believe it's better than the application for which they got consent on appeal. On that basis, I'm inclined to support it.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments? And the recommendation is to approve with the conditions. I'll move approval. Is that seconded?
Seconded, Chair.
Okay, we go. Yeah, please. Yeah, you can't. You can't. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, right, councillor Bridgen,
For.
councillor Chowdhury,
4.
councillor Franks,
For.
councillor Mead,
Or
councillor Ambia,
or
councillor Raja,
4.
councillor Steer,
4.
councillor Taylor.
4. That's unanimous. So permanent consent has been granted. Okay. It's 12 minutes past. We're right now. We will do on the road. That will take on the road. Okay, I think we're all back now, so we'll start. We'll go to the top of the agenda and do the land east of London Close. And the page, it's Abbey again, isn't it? Land northeast of London End.
Thank you, Chair. Please note the content of the update sheet. The applicant is EPL 002 Limited. Conditions 2, 3 and 5 are to be amended. Please also note that criteria C of the construction and management plan condition should be further amended to remove reference to the busway. The applicant has submitted 2 further plans clarifying the works taking place in Luton, a block plan and a plan of the trench for the underground cables. The applicant has also confirmed that the development will result in significant biodiversity net gain, despite the fact the application was submitted prior to the government requirements. This application seeks planning permission for underground cables proposed under Eaton Green Road to connect to an existing substation located in Luton Council's administrative area and to a proposed solar farm within 106 hectares with associated access, landscaping, battery storage and ancillary infrastructure located in North Hertfordshire District Council's administrative area. The application is a cross-boundary application. The cables are proposed to follow the route shown in this slide and will connect to Luton Airport Primary Substation. There are no changes proposed to the substation under this application. UKPN have been granted planning permission to carry out works to the substation under a different application. Sorry, it's a prior approval application they were granted permission under. The cables will be located in a 1.4 metre wide and 0.9 metre trench, primarily located within the grass verge adjacent to the highway. The proposed cables will connect to the substation and will be fed into the UKPN network. The proposed development will have the capacity to export 49.9 megawatts of electricity at any time. Luton Airport Primary Substation is part of the UKPN's regulated electricity distribution network that serves this part of Luton and parts of North Herts. Electricity supplied to this substation is likely to be used by nearby consumers in Luton and North Herts, including local large employers such as Luton Airport and Vauxhall. If there is not sufficient demand to match generation, any excess will be transferred across UKPN's distribution network and potentially across the broader national grid transmission network. The applicant has an obligation to remove the solar farm and associated cables at the ends of its operational life, which in this case the applicant has advised is 40 years. The cables are located underground and required to serve the proposed solar farm in North Hertfordshire. They will not be visible and as such cannot be considered to have a detrimental impact on the character and appearance of the area. Luton Council cannot make an assessment of the energy generating aspect of the development, as this falls within the remit of North Hertfordshire District Council. Luton Borough's Council adopted development plan is not applicable to the area located within North Herts administrative area. This part of the development must be assessed against North Herts adopted development plan. If this application is granted planning permission, this will not absolve the requirement for North Herts to make a decision on the majority of the application, which lies within their district. The Council has declared a climate emergency, and officers are acutely aware of the need to ensure that this is tackled at every opportunity. This application relates, however, only to the cabling and not the solar panels. While there is a positive benefit in terms of renewable energy, it is considered that this cannot carry significant weight in the determination of this application. Indeed, it is for North Herts to make an assessment of the energy generating aspects of the development. The cables will transport but not generate green energy, and without the solar farm in North Herts, there will not be any green energy. The proposed cables and underground, and as such, will not have a detrimental impact on the amenities of neighbouring occupiers. In regard to noise and disruption during construction, a construction management plan condition is proposed to be attached to the permission if granted. The Highways Officer has raised no objections to the development. stating that in order to install the underground cables as they are proposed within the highway, the applicant will need to apply for a street works permit separately from the local highways authority. The street works permit will not be issued for the cables if they have no purpose. If North Herts do not grant planning permission for the solar farm, the Highways Authority will not grant the street works permit to carry out the underground cabling. Notwithstanding this, the applicant has advised that the underground cable will not be installed if the solar farm is not granted planning permission by North Herts. The requirement in regards to the underground cable is that it has a function, which in this case is the proposed solar farm. In practice, cables are required for many types of development, and if installed by statutory undertakers, often don't require planning permission. The fact that North Herts have yet to determine the application within their district does not prevent this application being determined, nor does it imply in any way that North Herts should grant planning permission. It is for North Herts District Council to make an assessment of the development within their district against the adopted development plan for the area. Officers are satisfied that the environmental statements submitted with the application adequately demonstrate that the proposed cables will not have any adverse environmental impacts on the surrounding environment within Luton Borough Council's administrative area. On this basis, it is considered that development will comply with the policies in the adopted development plan and planning permission should be granted. Thank you.
Got it. Okay. Just check that Mr. Connor McNally. Okay, you indicated you're right to speak. Yeah, okay. But Councillor David Wynne, the ward councillor, is here as an objector, so I'll let him speak first. Okay. David, you've got up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Just as background, some of you will know that I've been involved in issues to do with the east of Luton and going into North Herts for many years, even before I became a ward councillor. So I know that area and all of the planning issues extremely well. Now, if we actually look at this agenda item, as you heard from the planning officer, no, us giving this approval to this application does not imply that Luton gives its sanction to the building of the solar panel, which is the subject of an undecided North Herts planning application at the moment. The issue that I have is that in previous situations, most recently with the North Herts local plan and its government inspection, Luton Borough Council was not clear in making sure that its position was properly represented to the planning authorities at that time. No matter what the planning officer here might be saying, what's the best way of putting this? We're saying that Luton's decision on this application will not affect and will not be taken as any implication that we endorse the planning application for the solar farm itself. That might be our perception, but there have been 407 public objections to that solar farm in the Greenbelt in North Herts. We might say that it will have no implication that Luton Borough Council endorses it. That will not be the public view on us granting this. I believe that the correct decision for this committee is to defer any decision on this application until after North Herts has actually taken its decision, because that way round we will be seen to be acting in an honest and open manner and not trying to in any way affect the North Herts decision. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you, Chair.
David, I'll ask the applicant. Questions of the ward councillor. Questions of the ward councillor. Francis?
Sorry, but obviously you appreciate that the North Herts application is not asked to determine or try and influence.
I entirely agree, and the planning officer made it clear in the introduction that we heard to this item. The planning officer made it clear that as far as Luton planning is concerned, they don't wish it to be taken as any form of approval or non-approval of the North Herts application. Yes, of course, that's a North Herts issue, but that is not, unfortunately, how the public will consider it, and it is not how the 407 objectors in North Herts will consider it. They will consider that we have effectively, by taking this decision at the wrong time, before the planning application, main planning application has been decided in North Herts, they will consider that to be a tacit approval, no matter what words are put on it by the planning officer.
I think I agree with Councillor Steer. We cannot take into consideration an application that's to be determined or not by North Herts District Council. We can only take this application we've got in front of us on merit, and that's what we shall determine tonight. Francis?
Also, we don't take planning decisions on what the public perception is. We take planning decisions on the merit of the application that we have in front of us.
Correct. Any other questions to Councillor Wynne? The last Colin McNally. You wish to respond? You got up to 5 minutes to speak, and members may wish to ask questions. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, and to the committee for the opportunity to speak this evening. My name is Conor McNally. I represent the applicant. As you've heard, the application is for the installation of electrical cables under Eaton Green Road to connect a proposed solar farm that would be located in North Hertfordshire's administrative area to an existing electricity substation located within Luton Council's administrative area. The committee has heard a summary of the report produced by your head of planning that recommends permission be granted for this application for the reasons contained therein. I fully support the officer's recommendation and the analysis undertaken. The report is clear that this proposal relates only to the installation of the underground cables. However, it does also recognise the significance of addressing climate change, the urgent need to ensure that new development delivers on an obligation to protect the environment for future generations, and this Council's climate change emergency declaration. If the solar farm is permitted by North Hertfordshire, the underground cables that are the subject of this application would allow the connection of the new green energy generation to the electricity grid. As such, approval of this proposal will indirectly facilitate new green energy production and is fully consistent with the Council's stated position and policy to address climate change. Conversely, if this application for the cables was refused and North Hertfordshire determined to approve the solar farm, such a refusal would frustrate delivery of that green energy. I note the points raised by Councillor Wynne, but I also note the officer report that specifically states that planning law requires applications must be determined in accordance with the development plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise. And I further note the comment on page 44 that confirms that considerations in relation to the solar farm proposal are not considered material for the purposes of this application. Your officer report also confirms that the fact that North Hertfordshire have yet to determine the application does not prevent this application from being determined, nor does it imply in any way that North Hertfordshire should grant permission. North Hertfordshire make a similar comment in their consultee report. They state the application will be taken to their Planning Control Committee in due course, but they are content that Luton Borough Council review the impacts of the proposal within their boundary and determine their part of the plan application accordingly. Your officer report concludes that the proposal for underground cables will comply with the NPPF and adopted local plan policies, and there are no detrimental impacts. I can confirm, as your officer stated, that the cable will not be installed until planning permission is granted for the solar farm proposal, and we will accept a condition to this effect should the committee feel that is required. Your head of planning recommends that planning consent should be granted for this proposal, and I ask you to uphold his recommendation and grant permission accordingly. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for that. Any questions to the applicant's representative? Councillor Franks.
Yeah, I do. I think we'll start off with, do you or your client have any idea when North Herts are likely to determine the main part of the application?
They had advised they were seeking to take it to committee in April, but I think now it's going to be in June because of the local elections.
Just one more question then. Since I've got a lot of sympathy for the position presented by David Wynne, i.e. wait until North Herts have made their minds up before we consider this, simply because if North Herts in fact refuse the application, then this won't be necessary. And no doubt the applicant will withdraw it anyway. So just an opportunity for you as the applicant's agent to tell us what detriment it will be to your client if we take that decision.
So I'm actually the applicant, not the agent. It would delay delivery of the green energy, and that therefore would be contrary to your own climate emergency, because we'd have to come back for further consideration by this committee.
Any further questions to the applicant? No further questions. Thank you very much. Right, questions by members to the planning officer. Councillor Francis.
Yeah, just on condition 4, this life expectancy of the cable has been 40 years. And the decommissioning of the cables, it's just they would be removed and the land returned to its original condition. Why would they be removed and not just left there?
If you're happy for the condition to be amended so that they're left there, that's fine as well. It was merely the fact that obviously it is in effect a 40-year permission. So my thoughts were that they should be removed and returned to its original condition. But I can amend the condition if the committee thinks that would be more appropriate.
Sorry, finished.
Yeah, I would say in respect to that condition, if something has been granted and it's there for 40 odd years, we're clearly not in the realm of temporary permissions whatsoever. So if in the event that something allows those cables to be used for 50 years, let's say, I don't think this committee should be overly worried about that. And therefore, I do not see why the permission needs to be time limited, especially when that time is 40 years rather than a year, which could be seen as temporary, which I'm not saying that you should grant a temporary permission. So my view is that condition isn't really necessary or reasonable, unless the planning officer can tell me otherwise.
I know that the legislation does require for the equipment to be removed when it's no longer required in effect. But I'm happy for the condition to be taken off if you think that's appropriate.
I must confess I do not know what that legislation actually is. But if there is legislation that requires them to be removed, then so be it. But I would say similarly, if there isn't such legislation from a purely a planning perspective, I can't see how it would be considered to be an issue.
Can we just delegate this issue on the condition to the officers so they can talk to each other? And it seems to me that it would be better to leave the decommissioned cables in the ground rather than disturb them and take them up.
The applicant representative.
Perhaps I can help. So this condition is normally applied to solar farms as a whole, and the reason it's applied is to ensure that the permission is temporary and therefore the land doesn't move from a greenfield to brownfield status. In this circumstance, this is only in relation to the cables, and we would be happy to keep this flexible, so have a condition requiring us to remove unless the council asked us to keep them in place at a future after 40 years. So that gives the council full control over whether those cables are removed. So if you wanted them removed in the future after 40 years, that would be within your control, and if you didn't, equally within your control, if that was acceptable to your
Yeah. Yeah, it's a difficult one. I'll listen to more.
Having worked with electric cables, they're worth a lot of money. The sort of cable we're looking at here is classified as a 4x400, and you're talking about £1,000 a metre. There's a lot of copper in there, and in 40 years' time, heaven knows what the price of copper will be. I can understand them wanting to dig them up, or wanting the option to be able to dig them up, because there's an awful lot of asset there. That's all I want to say.
Councillor Franks.
Well, on this, I've got 2 points I want to make really, but on this particular one, I would suggest it might be appropriate to alter condition 4 to say that they will be removed if required to do so by the planning authority. In fact, the owner may want to dig them up anyway for the reasons explained by Clive Mead. But further than that, I think I want to formally move that the application be deferred until North Herts have decided on their end of it.
I'd be happy to second that.
Okay. Yeah, you come in.
Thank you, Chair. It's just to re-emphasise all the points that have been made about this item compared with the item in North Herts. The fact there wouldn't be a permit given if North Herts' application isn't granted. The fact that, as one councillor said, public perception about material consideration isn't the point. The committee's purpose is to deal with planning considerations. And if the public need to be informed via other means what the decision, if it was to grant, actually means, then I would suggest that publicity or whatever is given as necessary. So I would very much urge members to think about what has been said in terms of the clear distinction we have and what you are here to determine, and whether deferring is something that you think is a good idea. Thank you, Chairman.
I think that we're stretching this out. We've got an application in front of us which cannot go ahead unless North Herts District Council determines the application for the solar farm. So if that's refused, then this won't go ahead. All we're doing is just looking for consent to put these cables in if they get consent from North Herts for the solar farm. I don't know what the confusion is. I don't know what benefit there would be to deferring it when we've got it in front of us this evening. Okay, it's been moved and seconded to defer this application. We'll take the vote.
Councillor Ajisola.
Blaine, this is not the application, this is a motion to defer. Yeah, and if you're for the deferment, and against, you're against.
It's the motion.
Councillor Bridgen.
For.
Councillor Chowdhury.
Against.
Councillor Franks.
For.
Councillor Mead.
For.
Councillor Ambia.
For.
Councillor Raja.
Against.
Councillor Steer,
Against.
Councillor Taylor,
Against. I feel against.
Just the point that Councillor Franks, I think, made on condition 4, in terms of the change of wording, forgive me if I've got confused, but I don't think I have. It would be up to the council to decide whether it determined it expedient in the public interest to enforce that condition in the event that we ticked over to year 40. So if things changed between now and then, which meant that it wasn't in the public interest and expedient to positively enforce that the land be returned to its original state and the cables removed, then I'd say that does enough to deal with the points that you were trying to make earlier.
I don't see anything that we can do that would prevent the owner of that material from digging it up if they decided they wanted to. What I'm anxious to do here is to give the local planning authority the opportunity to decide whether all the aggro for the residents in the area and traffic and all the other issues would be sufficient for the council to judge that, notwithstanding all that aggro, it would be better all around if the material was removed. So in the end, what I'm after is for the applicant to have the opportunity to remove it if they want to for realising the asset, and for the council to force them to do so if it thinks it's in the best interests of the area.
Francis?
The wording is shall be removed after 40 years.
Sorry, it's
The wording is shall be removed in that condition. So are we just saying that the planning authority just ignores that condition that they've put on?
No, Chair, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that the wording should be amended so that they shall be removed if the local planning authority considers that's the appropriate action to take at the time.
Yeah, okay. Okay with that. Yeah, so I can add that in. Any further questions? Any comments? There being no further comments, then we'll go to the recommendation, which is to approve with the conditions. I'll move that. Is that seconded?
Seconded.
We go to the vote now.
okay. Councillor Ajisola,
For.
Councillor Bridgen,
Abstain.
Councillor Chowdhury,
For.
Councillor Frank,
They're not voting.
Councillor Mead,
For.
Councillor Anvia,
For.
Councillor Roger,
For.
Councillor Steer,
Or
Councillor Taylor.
Four. That's carried, so the application has been approved. Right, we'll go on to the last one, which is the Park and Ride. Page 88. So over to you, Clive.
Thank you, Chair. This planning application is seeking permission for the construction of a park and ride facility, erection of a small site office, it has associated parking bays, landscaping, site access and other associated works. There is an update on this application as per the written update report circulated. There has been a recent response to the application from the Leeds Local Flood Authority, which now removes their original objection and recommends 3 conditions relating to surface water drainage, temporary drainage measures during construction, and a verification report. Additionally, the Highway Authority has confirmed that they are now comfortable with the design of the proposal, and Beds Fire and Rescue Service have confirmed that they have no comments on the application. Finally, members will know that a late representation has been submitted on behalf of Henry Boot, which states that there are inconsistencies and errors within the planning application submission. The inconsistencies highlighted are mainly minor errors made in the applicant's supporting statement, and these issues have all been addressed in the committee report before members. So I'll just take members through the slides. This is the application site outlined in red, which is an undeveloped plot of land on the Butterfield Business Park site. And the site would be accessed from a spur of Great Marlings from the fourth arm of the roundabout, which currently leads to the parking area of the hotel. This slide demonstrates the proposed site layout with a dedicated in-out access egress arrangement, and with the proposed site office located adjacent to the access in the southeastern corner of the site. And this office building itself would be a small single-storey building of approximately 43 square meters in area. It would utilise a brick finish with a green roof. In terms of other facilities on the site, there are two bus shelters on the top left, motorcycle shelter, and finally a cycle parking shelter. And just in terms of a computer generated image, this depicts how the access to the facility was looked. Members will see from paragraph 38 of this item that the main planning considerations relate to the principle of development, the impact on the character and appearance of the area, the impact on neighbouring amenity, transport and parking implications, and issues relating to biodiversity, ecology and trees, sustainability, economic development and job creation. The application site is identified as a strategic allocation where policy LLP 7 of the local plan applies. Policy LLP 7 allocates the undeveloped land of Butterfield Green for the development of high quality B1 and B2 uses compatible with the technology park concept. The policy also specifically supports the provision of a park and ride facility on circa 1 hectare of land, and the annotation for the park and ride is in the exact position of the current planning application. Additionally, policy LLP 7 part 10 sets out that a plot of land sufficient for a new 450 space park and ride facility to be provided near the entrance of the existing innovation centre in order to mitigate traffic in the borough and promote sustainable trips to and from this site will be a site specific requirement of development at the business park site. Accordingly, the current proposal is considered to be acceptable in principle. In relation to the policy requirement for a 450 space park and ride and the current proposal for a 338 space park and ride facility, the planning application is accompanied by a feasibility report for the park and ride, which examines the potential demand and scheme economics for a new park and ride facility at the site. Given this detailed and recent feasibility work, which concludes that a park and ride of this size would be feasible and financially self-sufficient at this size, it is considered acceptable that the park and ride now proposed is smaller than originally envisaged in terms of parking spaces proposed. Accordingly, it is considered that the principle of a park and ride facility in this location is supported in the local plan, and the recent detailed feasibility study has established the appropriate size. With regard to the impact of the proposal on the character and appearance of the area, with the imposition of suitable conditions to cover hard surfacing, landscaping, boundary treatment and materiality, it is considered that the proposal could achieve the high quality design as required by policy LLP 7 of the local plan, and it would have an acceptable impact on the character and appearance of the area. Additionally, with conditions to control external lighting and the landscaping detail, it is considered that the proposal would have an acceptable impact in terms of landscape conservation and would protect the character, setting and natural beauty of the Chilterns Area of Outstanding Natural Beauty in accordance with policy LLP 29 of the local plan. In relation to the impact of the proposal on neighbouring residential amenity, the nearest residential properties to the site are those on the opposite side of the busy A505 Hitchin Road, in Lambert Close, Edgewood Drive and Mount Grace Road. However, at this distance, it is not considered that the operation of the park and ride facility would have any adverse impact on residential amenity. In relation to other neighbouring properties, the nearest are the Hilton Garden Inn Hotel to the south and businesses in the Basepoint Innovation Centre opposite. The Council's Environmental Protection Officer has advised that the increase in the ambient noise level due to the park and ride would be 1 decibel. This is a marginal increase and is therefore considered to be acceptable, and no noise conditions are required other than an hours of operation condition. And in this regard, it has been agreed with the applicant that the park and ride would operate only between the hours of 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. on any day, which would be sufficient to avoid any adverse impact on the hotel or any adjoining business uses. With other conditions to control external lighting, land contamination and the construction of the facility, the proposal is considered to be able to avoid any adverse impacts on neighbouring uses in accordance with policy LLP 38 of the local plan. In relation to access, highway and parking implications, the Highway Authority is satisfied with the design of the facility now that further information has been provided. Therefore, no issue has been raised with the current proposal, subject to conditions relating to a construction method statement and signage strategy, which are included in the report. In relation to parking, the size of the park and ride is considered to be acceptable, with the feasibility report concluding that the size of the facility would be financially self-sufficient and would suitably cater for demand. The proposal also provides for cycle parking and motorcycle parking with dedicated shelters, and this is welcomed. Finally, utilising the existing access onto the A505 Hitchin Road for all traffic, the proposal would connect directly with the strategic highway network in accordance with policy LLP 13 of the local plan. In relation to biodiversity and ecology, the proposal would be able to proceed without adversely harming any existing habitats or protected species, and can also provide ecological enhancements with the introduction of native trees and shrubs, eco-friendly lighting, back bricks and green roofs. Therefore, the proposal is considered to accord with the principle of policy LLP 28 of the local plan to protect biodiversity. With regard to landscaping, policy LLP 7 of the local plan has a site-specific requirement for the retention of existing landscape features on the site, including hedgerows and ponds, and the proposal has been developed to preserve and enhance the substantial green buffers along the northern, eastern and southern boundaries. These landscaped areas assist in integrating the site into this edge of urban setting and also provide separation from adjoining land uses. So it is welcome that these are retained and enhanced. With the requirement for further landscape management and ecology enhancements through conditions 9 and 10, it is considered that the proposal would meet the requirements of policy LLP 7 of the local plan in relation to the retention of landscape features. With regard to sustainability and climate change, the park and ride facility is designed to seek to intercept and reduce vehicular traffic arriving from the adjacent Hitchin Road corridor. It is proposed to seek to alleviate congestion and the resulting air pollution and economic inefficiency by encouraging the modal shift of drivers from private cars into dedicated park and ride buses, reducing private car usage and improving sustainable transport choices. Accordingly, the park and ride facility fully accords with policies LLP 1, LLP 25 and LLP 37 in relation to promoting sustainable transport choices and supports the Council's stated drive to achieve carbon net zero by 2040. It is also recognised that sustainability features are included within the proposal, including a green roof for the office building and for the bus stands, which is welcomed. The report demonstrates how the proposal would generate significant employment opportunities in the construction sector during the facility's construction phase, whilst also supporting indirect employment opportunities through the supply chain. As such, the proposed development would support regeneration in the local area and would also provide a full-time employment opportunity to manage the park and ride facility based in the office building on site. Additionally, the proposed development would support the Butterfield Business Park strategic allocation by promoting greater sustainable transport choices, both for those driving into Luton and also for employees at the business park site. And this in turn supports this strategic allocation. These benefits are a material consideration that weigh in favour of the application and would accord with policy LLP 13 of the local plan that supports the delivery of sustainable economic growth. So in conclusion, the report demonstrates that the proposal is acceptable in principle. The proposal complies with policy LLP 7 of the local plan by providing a park and ride facility, which is a key element of this policy. Whilst it is smaller than that envisaged by policy LLP 7, the feasibility work supporting the application indicates that this 338 space park and ride facility is of an appropriate size to be financially self-sufficient and to cater for the anticipated demand. Additionally, the impact of the proposal on the character and appearance of the area would be acceptable, as would the impact on the Chilterns area of outstanding natural beauty. The report has also found that the impact on neighbouring uses would be acceptable. The highways impact and parking provision would be acceptable, and that impacts on biodiversity, trees and sustainability would also all be acceptable. Finally, the proposal would also provide for job creation during construction and operation and would support sustainable economic growth, complying with both policy LLP 13 of the local plan and the council's wider aspirations. For these reasons, it is considered that the development comprises a sustainable and high quality form of development. And on this basis, it is recommended that planning permission is granted subject to the conditions set out in the committee report and the additional conditions set out in the update report. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Clive. We've got Steve Lane online. Are you there?
Yes, Chair, I am.
Is there any specific questions as regards this project? Okay. So it's got Councillor Wynne now. You've indicated your right to speak.
Thank you, Chair. I know this park and ride has been on the cards for Butterfield Green for years. Nonetheless, and despite any external funding that might be associated with it, the report that's before you just simply defies logic. A lot of effort has been put into talking about the environmental impact and how acceptable it is. Quite frankly, whatever you built by way of park and ride on that site, given that it's an industrial estate, probably won't make any material difference. So that's really not a major consideration. If we look, what's actually being proposed is a part-time manned park and ride. It's alleging, according to the consultants' reports, to get cars off the road that are headed to central Luton. The consultants even have the audacity to put in their report that the route that the buses will take past Luton Airport, yes, they do, on Vauxhall Road. They don't go to the airport. They don't do anything like that. The only route to the airport is if the bus drops them off at the pedestrian entrance into the Parkway station off the road. Now, ask yourself a question. Who is going to use this park and ride? It said it's the people coming in from Hitchin and Letchworth. If they headed into Luton to work, most of those people who are using their cars will have somewhere to park when they get into Luton at their place of work. Are they going to stop off and use that park and ride? A 20-minute wait for a bus? 20 minutes as well when they come back and they try and get back? The buses are going into the central terminus. That's not an effective place. It's not where most of them want to be. The whole thing is just defying logic. The transport statements made by Pell Frischman that you'll find in the annex papers within the report, if you look carefully enough, are just wildly optimistic. They're talking in terms of a very high percentage utilisation in order to make the financial case for this park and ride. Probably the most effective park and ride that I know of, at least in the whole of the UK, is probably the park and ride at Cambridge that starts at Addenbrooke's Hospital going into Cambridge. The cost of parking in Cambridge is prohibitively high. It's even higher than some parts of central London. Even that park and ride is usually no more than 60% full. So why do the consultants think that the wildly optimistic claims in their reports are going to be viable? Nobody is going to sit and wait for a bus coming in on the Hitchin Road at Butterfield Green wanting to get into Luton. That's the simple facts. There's some references at points about football crowds. Again, it's not going to be used for football crowds. Local transport for those people who are local fans going into the grounds. Local transport is better than going up there and waiting for a bus that takes you into that central interchange. My biggest issue, I guess, is we're talking about a park and ride that's quite frankly not going to be used to the extent that is being suggested in the report. It's not going to be viable. And no matter what you do, you're not going to make it viable. And from a local councillor's perspective, what an enormous and utter waste of time. And we're pushing then every 20 minutes coaches going down roads which are already gridlocked, and they won't be ungridlocked just by a few cars going into the park and ride. I'm sorry, but it is a route to a complete white elephant that will only be to the detriment of the local community. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any questions for Councillor Wynne? Francis?
Whether this park and ride scheme is successful or not, surely is not a planning consideration for this committee. We're looking at this planning application on its merits.
Yeah, correct. It's been in a development plan for many, many years now, as far back as I can remember.
If I may, there is a consultant's report in there which is making a big deal of the fact that it is commercially viable. So you can't just dismiss the viability and the fact that it's going to be a white elephant just in that manner. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, but surely that is not a planning consideration, is it?
You could take that into account in your deliberations. Babatunde.
Just a quick question for Councillor Winch. I wanted to ask if he has an alternative or another economic report concerning the park on drive ride.
Do I have another way of making this viable?
Yeah, from what you've said and everything you've informed us this evening, you've spoken authoritatively. I want to perceive you have an alternative report somewhere. So I'm asking, do you have an alternative report that suggests it's not going to be viable?
Councillor, if you look through the detailed documents within the planning application, in the documents section, you will find 3 different reports from a consultant called Pell Frischman that covers all of the things that I'm talking about. It includes the viability report. It also includes the likely usage levels, and it gives the reasons why they think that it's going to be used that much. And quite frankly, I know they're supposed to be the experts, but just based upon what I see there, and if you want to go on a local example and see how well park and rides work going into town centres locally, go and have a look at the park and ride going into Bedford and see how much that's used.
Sorry, Chair. So I assume you don't have any alternative reports. So I presume you just it's because of what you've observed, in the areas around Luton, Bedford, for example, which you've mentioned, that's the reason why you think it's not viable.
No, I live there. I use the roads. I know what happens to the traffic. I don't have to guess. I see it every single day of my life. I don't have to guess. And the viability allegations or asserted levels of viability are those given by the consultants who have informed this report. And I'm sure you have read those reports, Councillor. And if you have, then you would have seen them for yourself.
Okay, any questions to Councillor Wynne? Okay, questions by members to the planning officer. Councillor Bridgen.
Thanks, Chair. So I understand that this park and ride is probably mostly targeted towards people commuting from Hitchin, Cambridge. So people commuting from the east. Living in that area and near that area, I also recognise that actually there's a lot of traffic that goes along Hitchin Road in the opposite direction towards Hitchin. And I'm concerned that if this park and ride is as successful as the report claims, that we're going to see a lot of traffic turning off of that main roundabout on the A505 into that estate, which I think is going to cause gridlock for traffic heading out of Luton towards Hitchin. So I'd like perhaps to ask either the planning officer or the highways consultant officer whether that's been considered and whether there's been any modelling or whatever to look at potential impacts on traffic heading out of Luton in that direction.
Steve Lane, did you hear the question?
Yes, I did, Chair. Yes, I did. There has been no specific modelling done on the roundabout because it was not considered that this would have an adverse effect. In fact, I think the report covers that, suggesting that the effects on the 505 would be negligible.
Yeah, just I think to add to that is that the roundabout and the estate was designed with this development in mind. However many years ago it was that it was originally installed. So.
Do you want to say something?
Yeah, just quickly. It's about what you're saying, Councillor, about normally demand for something that's before this committee isn't a material consideration. So, if, for example, it was a fast food restaurant and everyone thought, oh, well, there's so many of those, there's going to be no extra demand. Yes, you're absolutely spot on. I think this is nuanced because of the highway traffic implications, both for park and ride and potentially against the park and ride. I.e., if, for example, you feel that the park and ride won't produce the benefits that the report says, and therefore the reduction in traffic implications because of that, it is a material consideration. Do you see the distinction here? Yeah.
Any further questions? Yeah, Francis.
In the conditions, would it be possible to have a local labour clause for the construction of the site?
Yeah, that should be a problem.
Yeah, through you, Chair. It's really just about the size of this application. So normally we do try and attach that to all major applications. This is just under the threshold of a major application, which is why it's not included.
Councillor Mead.
Is there a limit to how long you can park in the park and ride? Or are we going to see it full of people going off on holiday and using it as airport parking?
Yeah, let Steve answer that one if that's okay.
Chair, can I answer that one? Yes, the intention is that this is for daily parking only. The intention is that it would be normally from, say, 7 till 7. And we have to take effect that there may be an occasion where somebody's not able to return back at night. But we will have a penalty charge for anybody who's stopping excessively long. It is not for holiday use, full stop.
I think I originally heard it was 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. And if it was going to be used in the future, possibly for Luton Town Football Club, that could cause a problem with if they have an 8 o'clock kickoff. But there again, it doesn't bar Luton Town Football Club for using it as a park and ride for their power court side. Any further questions? Yeah, Catherine. I've just thought that.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, it's a comment to the officer. You have mentioned on the point number 29, just saying there are 2 bus shelter. We can see there's a less public transport in the Luton Road. So how you ensure people will get benefited, and is there any special arrangement for any shuttle bus, or is it for the general public bus you will arrange? And is there any specified which route it will cover? Thank you.
Probably one for you again, Steve. I can just point out, just before I go to Steve, just where the bus shelters are in the layout. So if I take you to, this is the proposed layout, the one bus shelter on the western side and one on the eastern side. But in terms of bus routes and proposed vehicles, is that something you've able to answer, Steve?
Yes, the intention is that the shuttle buses will be used from the car park along Hitchin Road, down Vauxhall Way, and then onto Kimpton Road, and then enter in via the busway through to the station.
Just to be clear, there will be a dedicated shuttle buses operating. Because at the moment, the Arriva 100 101 calls into the hotel, but that's fairly long frequency. So there will be dedicated buses.
The intention is we will have 3 shuttle buses in total that will be used for this, which will be initially on a demand basis, and then we will either maintain those 3 or we'll increase it as needs be. Because I've taken account of Councillor Wynn's concerns about the 20-minute wait. That's not our intention to have that. That was just purely for statement purposes. That would be, if you like, a minimum level.
Okay.
Chair, may I just come back?
Sorry, David. David, I've given you loads of opportunity. You've had your chances, so it is not a debate going on at the moment. Any further comments? Councillor Franks.
I thought we were still on questions, so I'm just interested to know whether it's expected that the buses will be provided by one of the existing operating bus companies, and whether, if they are not viable from the operator's point of view, does the council have any plans to subsidise them?
I think this is going outside the planning requirements, but I will answer the question because it's relevant, and that is that as part of the funding that we have from the Department of Transport, we will be purchasing three buses, and they will be provided to one of the local bus operators, who will then provide the drivers and provide the service that we require. So we won't be actually operating them, but they'll be operated on our behalf through the funding that we have from the Department of Transport.
Thank you, Steve. That's very helpful.
Further questions? We're going to comments now. Are there any comments? No comment?
Yeah.
That was, yeah.
Yes, actually, I agree with Councillor Frank. It's a very important. We need to have some sort of business case about how the bus and what will be how the user can get benefited from this parking facilities. Then, if it is like any proper plan about who's going to pay or who's going to subsidize, because we used to hear from the council, lots of bus route was closed because of there's no money from the government, or there's a less demand. So you will need to ensure there is enough sufficient fund to run the
I think the
service.
question been asked,
Yeah.
Steve Lane, about the we dedicated 3 dedicated buses paid for that would operate.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, how many passengers they contain is another thing, but at least it's something. There's a park and ride which is there available. I know there are going to be some difficulties, and I do have my doubts about it. As regards busways, I've experienced the Headington busway that goes into Oxford, which works very well, and dedicated bus lanes take you right through to the city centre. I can't see any dedicated bus lanes around the town that would serve this. But anyway, you have to agree with the principle of there was meant to be a park and ride. I'm in Butterfield Green, and there we have it. Okay, there being no further comments, then we'll go to the vote, and the recommendation is to approve. I'll move approval. Is that seconded?
Seconded, Chair.
Councillor Ajisola,
4.
Councillor Bridgen,
Against.
Councillor Chowdhury,
4.
Councillor Franks,
Against.
Councillor Mead,
Against.
Councillor Ambia,
4.
Councillor Raja,
4.
Councillor Steele,
4.
Councillor Taylor.
4.
Carried.
So that's carried. So planning consent has been granted to the park and ride Butterfield Green, subject to the conditions. I think that being the extent of the business tonight. Thank you very much. Next time.